Hey everybody, welcome back to the Pine Hills Church podcast. My name is Aaron. So grateful that you are with us again. We kicked off a new series on Sunday called Covenant Keeping God, where we're looking at the big story of the Bible and tracking the different covenants that God makes throughout the story and really showing how God is so faithful when we continuously show ourselves to be unfaithful. And yet he continues to pursue us with grace, offering us relationship, redemption, allowing us to find our identity in him. And so hopefully this message today brings a lot of life and value to you, and we're praying for you, but just want you to tune in to listen through a hard story and find some meaning in that, because God will take even the hardest stories and begin to bring some life and some meaning that can inspire our lives even today. So again, hopefully this teaching is a blessing for you. I'll see you on the other side. Bye. But as we step into a new series, it's called Covenant Keeping God. And so we're going to, over the next few weeks, we want to help you to understand the scriptures a bit more. It's pretty hard if you open up the Bible and you just start reading through it. Even if you start in the first few pages, it's pretty beautiful for a bit, and then it gets really sketchy really quick. And then you start to have all kinds of questions, like what in the world is happening? And so you're trying to do your best to read through this thing, but it's really, really difficult. And it's really hard. And so we wanted to help you to understand kind of these big themes that are happening in the Bible and the big movements. And so you're going to understand more of what that looks like, but also to understand how God is this covenant-keeping God all through every movement of the scriptures. And even when I say covenant, some of you guys might be flinching a bit because we have a really bad understanding of what covenant means in our culture. For instance, I want you to think about, has there been a time in your life when someone broke a covenant or they broke a promise that deeply hurt you? Think about that time. Think about what that was and how you felt. It stings, doesn't it? I think every one of us have experienced that in some level. But it stings because deep down we long for trust, for people to mean what they actually say, for people to follow through with their commitments, to people to stay in covenant when we say we're going to covenant together. And those wounds just don't shape how we view people, they also shape how we see God. And if we've been let down by others, it's easy to project that onto him, to wonder, is God really different? Can he really be trusted? Is he going to keep his promises? Is he going to keep his covenants? And over the next few weeks, we're diving into that big story of the Bible, not just to learn history, but to trace this pattern. God keeps showing up, and God keeps making covenants, and even when humanity falls short, God stays faithful. And today we're going to look at one of the earliest and hardest stories in Scripture, but if we're willing to sit with that, I believe we'll catch glimpses of who God is and how that brings redemption and hope and healing and help, even when the story is a bit heartbreaking. And so what I want you to get over the next few weeks is that the Bible is this unified story told through many books. It's not just one book, it's actually a library of books. So this one unified story, which is really amazing, because if we go to coffee like a month apart, I don't think that I could tell you a unified story. But these guys, on different continents and different languages and different cultures at different points in history, still wove together this beautiful thing inspired by the Spirit. Had it been a work of God? But they tell this unified story of who God is and who we are in relationship to him and what he's doing in our world. And in the movements of the scripture, the big themes are creation, fall, Israel, redemption, church, and then the renewal of all things. So every week you're going to see this slide, and at the top it's going to just orient you where we are in the kind of meta-narrative of the scripture. And so today we're going to primarily focus on the fall. And then within that, then there's the covenants below that. And so God extends grace where it isn't deserved. And in an attempt to live connected with humanity, despite humanity's constant rejection of him, he begins to show up to make these covenants, to keep driving the story forward. And we see his heart through those covenants, through Adam, through Noah, through Abraham, through the nation of Israel, Moses, King David, Jesus, and then the new covenant. Now you might be thinking, what in the world is a covenant? A covenant is a committed relationship. It's a sacred promise here in this context between God and his people. And we saw Adam, Genesis 1 through 2, that's the first covenant. We see how God created humanity and placed them in a garden where they get to live connected to him.
His end of the agreement is that he will live with humanity. He will provide everything for them. That's a beautiful promise, right? I will take care of everything. And their end of the covenant is that they should trust God enough not to eat off one particular tree. It's like giving your kids, you could do anything today but this one thing. What are they going to do? It's a story of all of humanity. But you're holding back on me. You're not delivering. What are you doing? And we prove time and time again that we just think that, man, God isn't holding his end, that he's holding back, that he's not doing what he should be doing. And when we break that covenant with him, Genesis 1, the rejection of the covenant leads them to not being welcomed in the garden. If you got a lot of questions about that, go check out an entire series we did called the Garden Series, where we trace that theme all throughout the scriptures. But if you continue to track through the story from Genesis chapter 3 and you get to 6, you read of an even more heartbreaking story of humanity continuing to unravel, murder happening, like other weird stuff happening, and it leads to this really hard moment in the story. Genesis 6, 5 through 8 says this: "The Lord observed the extent of human wickedness on earth, and he saw that everything they thought or imagined was consistently and totally evil. So the Lord was sorry he had ever made them and put them on the earth. It broke his heart. And the Lord said, I will wipe this human race I have created from the face of the earth. Yes, I will destroy every living thing, all the people, the large animals, the small animals that scurry along the ground, and even the birds of the sky. I'm sorry I ever made them." But Noah found favor with the Lord. And so with that, I'm going to reread the text, and I want to have more interaction with you because we want to continue to break this model that this is just information dumping on you. And we actually want to hear from you different things. And so I'm going to read this passage again. I want you to think through, what can you learn about God even in this difficult passage? So what do you learn about God? What does it say about him? What is the things that jump out at you? And so I'm going to read it. I want you to hold on to that, and then you're going to tell it to one of your neighbors, and then I'm going to ask for some of those. Okay, you with me? Yeah? All right, cool. Let's do it. "The Lord observed the extent of human wickedness of the earth, and he saw that everything they thought or imagined was consistently and totally evil. So the Lord was sorry he had ever made them and put them on the earth. It broke his heart, and the Lord said, I will wipe this human race I have created from the face of the earth. Yes, I will destroy every living thing and all the people, the large animals, the small animals that scurry along the ground, and even the birds of the sky. I am sorry I ever made them." But Noah found favor with the Lord. So take a minute, talk to someone next to you. What do you see this passage say about God? What jumps out at you? For me, if I could be really honest, when I read that passage first, I notice all the negative. Maybe that's just me. Maybe that says something deeply about my personality, that when I read something, I focus on the negative. Maybe that's something I need to work out with my counselor. I'm not sure. We'll add it to the list. There's a bunch of stuff there, right? But as I sit in the text, and as I ask the text more and more questions, and as I just allow what it's saying to kind of continue to get in my mind and my heart, and I continue to notice each of those individual pieces, I start to notice there's a lot of the good here, even though there's some negative. Some things I've already pointed out, that God notices things happening on earth and in people's hearts. So God knows what's happening on earth, and he knows what's happening in your mind and in your heart. That's an important piece to understand about God. That God intimately cares about sin. And I know sometimes we get really worried about that word, sin. Oh, we need to stay away from it. No, we don't need to stay away from it. We just need to define it rightly, right? When I go to the doctor and if I have cancer sitting in my body, I need to make sure that doctor's not afraid to tell me about the cancer so that I have a shot to live. And so sin ultimately isn't this arbitrary list of right and wrong. Sin is literally a toxic activity that will destroy you and others. Like, God cares about sin. It's not a cosmic right and wrong sheet. Like, that's not what God cares about. God cares about us being healthy and living healthy lives and not destroying one another. And then God's heart breaks at the sight of all the brokenness playing out in the world that he had created. And remember, there's no timelines. This is 3 chapters, but this is an enormous amount of like human history, which means God is being patient with the wickedness of humans, that God is being patient not just to intervene and to like take away what he has given. Like he's patient and he lets it get to a point where finally he steps in and has to do something. And what's his response in the passage? His response is to make a choice that broke his heart, a choice that he did not want to make, a choice that he didn't see another one for, another way. And so he decides to destroy all people, the people he had created, the people that he gave life to, and to destroy creatures, the ones that he has created and given life to bring judgment on their choice to reject God. If humanity lives in relationship with God and they don't reject him, does this happen? No. It's humanity's choice to reject God and to live in wickedness. And God at some point is up there watching this sin destroy and break and just destroy his world. And finally he steps in to stop it. See, judgment wasn't an act of maliciousness on behalf of God, but the giving over to the free choice that humanity had made, which, to be clear, would have been an act of grace because of humanity's bent to exploit and to destroy each other. This was God's response to cauterize the bleed, to stop it. And then after he decided this, notice that it says this. He decided to destroy all humans and all creatures. But then in verse 8, but Noah found favor with the Lord. And then God does something different, which carries the meaning that humans have the ability to move and change the heart of God. Can you imagine? He spoke life into existence. He defines right and wrong and all this. And he's decided, man, the wickedness has reached a point. I have to do something to stop the bleed. But then he notices one particular person, and that person changes his heart. That's amazing. Which means that should change your interaction of how you interact even with God, that God responds and he moves and he's empathetic and he cares and he notices and he wants good for our lives and the lives of the world. And we see in Noah that he finds favor and that the course of humanity is changed because of Noah. See, the story of Noah is this man. I can't imagine this life that he's living, trying to live faithfully before God, but everyone else isn't. And yet God comes along and he says, man, I want you to build this ark, to build this boat. And he teaches him how to do it, to save humanity, to save his family, to save creatures. And he puts them in this boat and he brings this great flood. And then Noah and his family and a bunch of animals. That's crazy. I tried to do some research into how long Noah was on the boat before the waters recede and he's able to get off. And the best number I got, so I'm going to put ish because you know every number is always like an ish anyway, right? So 371-ish days from the time that God shuts the door of the ark and he begins to float. He's in a boat, an ark. I don't care how big you think that boat was. I bet you it got really small really quick. Can you imagine like any road trip with your family that's just ongoing? Like 7 days you thought was difficult. 371 stuck in an ark with all the different emotions that are happening about all your friends and all the different things that happened with that. And all of these animals. And you're like, I know it's been 241 days and these animals have not eaten me. Am I going to make it another day? Like I can only imagine the questions that would come up with some of them. In Genesis 8, Verse 20 says this, getting back to the beginning of the story. Then Noah built, after this, the waters recede, Noah comes off the boat, he's saved. Then Noah builds an altar to the Lord, and there he sacrificed a burnt offering, the animals and birds that had been approved for that purpose. And the Lord was pleased with the aroma of the sacrifice and said to himself, I will never again curse the ground because of the human race, even though everything they think or imagine is bent toward evil from childhood. I will never again destroy all living things. As long as earth remains, there will be planting and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night. Can you imagine? 371 days on this ark. I can't imagine all the time it took to make the ark and everyone else's opinion of him while he's doing that. Like, does anyone just like wake up and just like, I want to be the weirdest guy in town? Like I want everyone to just have rumors about me, like want nothing to do with me. They just think I'm crazy. And then getting on the ark, I can't imagine that. And then getting off and seeing your life spared. Like Noah had trusted God to venture into the chaos, that the boat was going to hold, that the animals weren't going to eat him, that God was going to keep him safe. Like he was willing to trust God in some pretty chaotic circumstances I don't think we give Noah enough credit for. I don't think we put ourselves enough in this story. And now he's standing on dry ground knowing God has been faithful to him. Responds by worshiping God. And the new covenant comes in response to Noah's trust and Noah's worship. Genesis 9, 1 through 2. Then God blessed Noah and his sons and told them, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth, all the animals of the earth, all the birds of the sky, all the small animals that scurry along the ground, and all the fish in the sea will look on you with fear and terror. I have placed them in your power. That's incredible. Notice the language is echoing back to Genesis 1 and 2 with Adam and Eve, that same language, right? Be fruitful and multiply, rule with authority God has given. And despite the failure of humanity, God is still moving through the story to affirm his desire to live with humans, to be faithful despite the unfaithfulness, because he is a covenant-keeping God. Even when we fail our end of the covenant, he will always keep his end of the covenant. And what's beautiful about this one with Noah is that God is making that covenant alone. Like, I'm going to be faithful regardless of your faithfulness. That I will keep moving this redemption story further. Genesis 9, 14 through 17. When I send clouds over the earth, the rainbow will appear in the clouds. And I will remember my covenant with you and with all living creatures. Never again will the floodwaters destroy all life. When I see the rainbow in the sky, I will remember the eternal covenant between God and every living creature on earth. Then God said to Noah, yes, this rainbow is a sign of the covenant I am confirming with all the creatures on earth. God gives a gift of a rainbow as a symbol. That's an amazing thing. And as I was even thinking about it as I was writing this, I'm thinking, well, one, it's probably good because I think for Noah and his family for a long time, there's probably some immediate just like triggered reactions when it starts raining again back from their history. Last time this happened, the whole world flooded. We got on a boat. Imagine all that with that. But then also remember this, the rainbow reminds God of this covenant between him and people. And then we get to look at the same rainbow and we get to remember the covenant that God made towards us, that he's not going to destroy all life. And so that's a really profound thing. Maybe you think it's nerdy or geeky. Like, I really don't care. Next time you see a rainbow, you can even begin to think as you're looking at that rainbow, God is looking at that same rainbow. That's such a connective thing that we get to have in our world. That after a rain, when the beautiful rainbow comes out and everyone else is pulling out their phones to get it on Instagram, you could just sit in prayer for a moment and just think, man, God, you're so faithful and you're so good. And you remain faithful despite my unfaithfulness. And I get to remember that at times in this world where it just doesn't seem like you notice that you're moving, that you're answering my prayers, any of that, I can have this beautiful symbol that when I see it, I get to remember again that you see me and that you notice and you know what's happening in my heart. You know what's happening in my mind and you care and you move and you work. That's a beautiful remembrance. It's a beautiful symbol. And so we get to just ask, as we remember, as he's faithful, will we be faithful? And with all that, let's just sit for that in a moment and feel what we might be feeling in response to this story of all that's happened, to this flood, judgment that came, and yet God is working through one family to bring about the saving of humanity. What does that bring to your mind? What does that bring to your heart? What does it bring to your heart to remember that God sees you and notices you and knows what you're thinking and responds? What do you think of God when you hear this story? If you're like me, you might be thinking, Aaron, I have a lot of questions. we need to get coffee quick, right? We got a lot of questions. And I just want to validate that for a moment, that that's okay to have questions. It's okay to wonder, what does this mean of God? What does this say about God? And it's okay to be working through what you think about certain stories and how the Bible even portrays God at times and what you think about this particular thing. But as you think about those questions, as you recognize, as you allow yourself to notice what you're feeling and thinking, I also want to encourage you to do these things. To ask God the questions that you might have and be willing to sit in some tension with God. Because so many of us, we hear stories and we're like, you know what, I'm kind of out. Instead of letting God actually walk you through that. And the beautiful part is if you continue to read the story of the Bible, Jesus says that he gives us a spirit that's within us that leads us into all truth. And so if that promise is true, that even through some of our most difficult questions that we have about the Bible or about God, that somehow there's a spirit that can reside in us and around us and it can lead us into all truth. And so let's take God up on his promise and let's bring all of our questions to God and be willing to sit in some of those tensions, because sometimes he doesn't always answer the why behind some things, but he always gives the gift of who he is. And sometimes that's enough. It's good. And then I want to invite you to continue to learn by reading more of the Bible. Reading more of it and seeing what else tends to pop up, what other questions that you have. And as you learn more of the Bible, you will start to understand that this thing helps you to understand other passages. That we get to learn how to interpret what is unclear about God with what is most clear about God. And where do we see the clearest picture of who God is? In the person of Jesus, right? And so that's where we need to always come back to when we have questions about God. What does this say about God? The clearest picture we have of who God is Jesus. And so then we can then begin to filter that through Jesus. And that doesn't always help us with all of our questions. But you know what? It helps us to work through quite a bit of it, okay? And then we need to continue to have open and honest conversations in community about these questions. Conversations in community. Not random Google searches in the middle of the night or odd TikToks that pop up. In fact, I was just having a conversation with one of our friends who recently gave her life to Jesus and is deeply involved in their community. And I'm pumped because they used to have all kinds of questions about Jesus. And now it's whipping out their big Bible in the middle of the park and what about this? And I'm pumped and excited about that. But I remember one of the things that has stuck with them that they shared, was actually helpful for me, was they had someone encourage them, don't allow a 7-second video shape your view of God. Don't allow a 7-second video shape everything that you think you know about God. Go to the scriptures, go to the word, read it openly, open-handedly, have the conversations in community. And guess what? We can disagree about quite a bit of this and still be in community together, and that is okay. We allow Jesus to be the center, and we keep working towards him. Because none of us have all the answers. And the person that says that they do, probably not someone you want to hang out with, right? And so, we have this in community. We work it through together, even passages like this. So what has been most clear? Let's practice doing this. What has been most clear about God in this story that we read today, where there's a lot of other stuff that's still a little bit unclear? What is most clear about God? Well, God is committed to us despite our unfaithfulness. Isn't that a beautiful truth? Thank goodness, because of his patience, because I got a long trajectory of being unfaithful, and yet he has been faithful at every point in my story, leading me back to him, giving me grace, and helping me to finally begin to live a bit different. That's a beautiful reality. Second thing, God cares and notices what is happening in our lives. Despite what you might be feeling or thinking, God cares about what's happening in your life. He notices, he knows what you're thinking, even when he's not on your timeline. The third thing, God moves in response to our trust and our worship. So as we trust in God, as we put our trust in him, as we worship, saying, above all things, man, I'm going to give you glory and honor. And I don't know all these things, but I'm going to trust you in the midst of that. And I'm going to allow you to work the details out. God moves in response to that heart. That's what we learned in the passage today. So of those things, of those three things, that God is committed to us despite our unfaithfulness, that God cares and notices what is happening in our life, that God moves in response to our trust and worship. Of those things, what feels like good news today to you in your life with whatever you might have going on? What feels like good news? What feels like something you can hold on to? And so let's just keep reflecting on those things that feel like good news. I want you to hold on to that. I want you to hold on to that. That's the thing that I want you to like write on the mirror, like with the marker, right? I want you to put it like on the wallpaper of your phone. I want you to put it as like a reminder. I want you to put it as like a sticky note that maybe you pull out, or the thing you write in your journal, wherever that might be. Like, what is that good thing? Like the thing like God notices and cares. Because Monday morning you might get up and things are tough and wonky and weird, and you might need to just pull it out. Oh yeah, God cares and he notices and he's working. We just need to constantly tell ourselves that. But let's reflect. Where have I seen God's faithfulness in my life, even this week? I want you to think about in your head, where have you seen God's faithfulness? Where has that been? Where has he shown up in your life? If he's living and he's active and he's true, if he moves in response to us, if he notices what's happening in our life, then he has to be working in some sense, maybe even at times so small we don't often notice. But let's look back. Where is that moment in this week where you felt like God moved? Where you felt like God moved, you felt like God did something. In our community or our house gathering, we had someone come over who Anthony's been like working on for a while. Like, and working on is the wrong word, but living in relationship, loving, praying for, representing Jesus really well for. And he came over for dinner and had tacos with us, right? And something beautiful happened, right? Because I told you all the time, deeply spiritual stuff happens over tacos. You don't believe me, but you didn't show up on Thursday, so you didn't get to see it. But beautiful thing happened. And I was pumped to see Anthony so excited that like a friend who he's just been loving and caring for is responding and doing something. And we'll see what happens with that. We don't know the end of the story yet. Where have you seen God's faithfulness? And I want you to think about your life. The flip side should challenge us. Is there anything in our heart, our life, we just feel like we've been a bit unfaithful in? Maybe we've not given God the benefit of the doubt. Maybe we've not trusted God in certain places, and we just need to say, God, I'm sorry. Would you change that perception? Would you change that attitude? Where have I been unfaithful? Where have I not been living in that relationship with a God who responds to me? Where have I not even shown up in that relationship by giving him any time or any space? Where have I kind of been unfaithful? And so this week, I want to invite Nicole to come up. We're going to sing a couple more songs, but I want you to practice. Practice this week looking for signs of God's movement and faithfulness in your life. Maybe that's not something you're even like noticing, right? If you ever go to begin that process of like buying a car, I don't know if you've ever done this, like very interested in I don't know, a purple Kia. And so I'm going to go hang out with Zabel, and he's going to hook me up with like a good deal on a purple Kia. And before you're like, man, it's super original. There's no other purple Kias on the road. Like, it's going to be awesome. And all of a sudden, like, you just start to notice how many purple Kias are actually out on the road. I don't know how many of them are actually out there. I'm just picking an arbitrary color and thing. But you know what I'm saying. When you get your eyes tuned to the right thing, you begin to start to notice all kinds of new things, right? And so begin to notice, God, where are you moving? Where do I see that? Maybe you even need to ask and pray this prayer. God, would you help me to notice? Would you help me to notice where you're moving, what you're doing? And so let's just pray before we go into a couple more songs. God, thank you so much that you are present in this moment, that you have given us these stories in your scriptures to communicate what's happened in our world, but also who you are in the midst of all of that. And I'm so deeply grateful that there's difficult stories in the scripture, because if it was just so plain and clear cut and all of that, man, this thing would feel a lot more made up. But there's hard passages, there's hard stories to work through, because you're a God that's not afraid of any of that. And you're a God who consistently shows himself faithful, that you love us, that you care about us, that you're moving in our world and our life. And thank you for the faithfulness of Noah, who changed the trajectory of humanity. But also, can you inspire us for a life faithfully lived before you out in Bend, how that might change the trajectory of our neighborhood. It might change the trajectory of our family or our apartment complex or our workspace or whatever that might be. To connect the dots that the thing that we do each and every day actually matters deeply before you, and that there's beautiful things that can happen when we begin to connect the thing that we do with the powerful God of the universe and bring those things together and allow you to begin to break in and bring your kingdom and bring life and love and healing and hope. And you choose to want to do that through us. So thank you for these stories. Thank you for what we know to be clear and true in scriptures, and help us with all the other questions that we might have in our head and our heart. Let's not shy away from them because you're not afraid of them. If we go read the book of the Psalms, like, you're not afraid of our deepest, darkest thoughts. You're not afraid of our questions, that we can bring them all before you. And just like we learned in the text today, you'll respond and you'll move and you'll help us. So would you come and help us to encounter you, help us to sing about these songs to you. We love you. In your name we pray. The family said,
well, welcome back. So grateful that you would listen to this week's teaching. I just want to encourage you to continue to pray through the things that we talked about and continue to allow God to reveal anything in your heart that he might want to reveal, and really take us up on that challenge of looking this week for moments where you see God kind of breaking into your life. What are the things that he's doing? How is he showing himself to be faithful? And really evaluate your life and think through, where have I not been so faithful? And where do I need to maybe ask forgiveness for God and ask for some help from God, because he's always willing to be there for us, to guide us along the way through his Spirit, which is such an amazing thing. Just want to thank you again for listening to this teaching. If you need more information about our community, please visit us at pinehillschurch.org. If not, we'll see you in the next episode. Have a great day. Bye.